All right, so today we're going to be talking about social media information systems. So I think social media is near and dear to most people. I would say on average, people probably have 3 or 4 social media accounts. So how many people have Facebook? They're willing to admit it. You guys still use it or no?
I deleted mine.
Okay, so what are you guys using now? Instagram? Snapchat? Okay. So even on Snap, so let me help people out. Even on Snapchat, even though it seems like the pictures aren't being recorded, anytime you send something out, it's being recorded somewhere. So you hear about people taking shots of things that people don't want to see that are normally clothed. So you might pass that to somebody thinking that you're being cutesy or whatever. Don't, because I knew a guy that did that, and he got in a lot of trouble. Like his life got kind of ruined. So yeah, so don't do that. Even though you think Snapchat, I took the picture, no big deal. It's out there, trust me. Okay, it wasn't me though, not me. I would not trust you. You can't. I mean, like this job, you guys have to do like all kind of crime, and it's a good thing. You have to do criminal background checks and everything else. So it's yeah. But it was a student, a nephew of mine who sent something to his girlfriend, and not good. All right, so what's the power of social media? Well, in Aruba, what do you do? Maybe just ask Yelp. I wouldn't consider myself a biker dude, but on this particular day, it's like me and my wife on a cruise, and here we are, like, hey, there's trikes Aruba, so you can go rent the trike and try not to wreck. It's pretty funny that you have like all these people. It's like go start out, and then like 2 people crash into each other. So I'm like, oh my gosh, she's gonna die on this trike today. But it's kind of funny. So yeah, look at everybody coming on in. Look at this. Wow, look at this. I'm impressed. So make sure you guys get stickers. Corey, JR, and Tim. Cool. All right, so yeah, so this is Trike to Aruba. It's a really fun tour. If you guys ever do find yourself in Aruba, I would go do Trike to Aruba. It's like a great way to see the island. You got all these trikes, and
who took that picture of these?
They took that from the car. So it's like you're just there, but it's like these funky trikes with this like manual shit. So you have to know how to drive a manual. If you don't, it's like so that kind of cuts down on probably most people. But yeah, so it's like this big old thing, and you're doing that, and they had other action shots, but I just figured I'd bore you guys with one. But yeah, it's pretty fun. So yeah. So as we start talking about social media, we talk about an information system. Okay, so we learned before that we had information systems had what? Anybody remember? So we talked about IT systems, and we talked about so we had information systems. We said it has what? People. Okay, people. And procedures, and then data, hardware, and software, right? Okay, so we start talking about social media information systems. We start talking about information systems that are designed to handle social media. So at the end of the day, this is use of IT. So we said that's data, hardware, software, and data to support content sharing amongst networks of users. So we call these communities or tribes or even hives, but for the most part, it's communities. So when you join something like a Facebook or an Instagram or Snapchat, you are part of a user community. So this is like people that are related to each other by a common interest. Okay? So red star, full red. Just thinking out loud here. Okay, so as we start looking at social media, though, it's kind of interesting because this is this whole convergence of a bunch of disciplines coming together. Things like marketing, management of information systems, computer science to design the applications, sociology, psychology, and organizational theory. So as we look at this, it is kind of interesting that we have all these different pieces and parts of these disciplines that come together to formulate social media. when we start looking at social media, there's going to be 3 primary roles, and we're going to discuss each one of these. There's user communities. There's user communities. There's sponsors. And then there's application providers. So let's talk about each of these. Okay, so let's see. Anybody else want to get a sticker? Corey? Is the sticker sheet still running around? Or is there anything on it left still? Oh, all right, cool. Yeah. All right, so if you guys could just pass that up, that'd be great. Okay, cool. So let's talk about each and all these. So Gold Star, you have to know each of these 3 parts: user communities, sponsors, and application providers. So as we start looking at user communities, and this just isn't something that's in Facebook, and this is like the whole human race. Okay, so this comes all the way back into anthropology. So why do people cluster together? What does that give you? What does community give people? What do you guys think? Like, think back to the cave days. What did that mean? If you're a one-off, what happens? The big tiger bear eats you or something like that, right? So what happens when you become part of this community? What do you guys think? Like, think anthropology.
Like security?
Security, so it could be security, strength in numbers. So it could be maybe you didn't get meat that day, but your neighbor got meat, and maybe they'll feed you for the day or something like that. Protection from like things, and then they started fire, and then you have and then you could eat things, and you have lights and all kind of other things. So a lot of times these communities were based on families and geological locations. However, with the internet of today, the world is flat. Has anybody heard of Thomas Friedman? He's like a New York Times author, really, really sharp, smart guy. I love reading his articles. But he created the book, The World is Flat, and then he also created Hot, Flat, and Crowded. Both are great reads. But again, it's this whole notion of the world being flat. So what do we mean by that? The world is flat. Somebody take a stab at that. Sam, what do you think when we talk about the world being flat? So Christopher Columbus discovered it was like curved. Okay, but what do we mean by the world's flat nowadays? So it's kind of like the world's like round. So like if we draw a picture, it's like if you're like on this point, so let's say you're on top of the world here. Okay, you're on top of the world. Okay, here's Sam. And if you look out, due to curvature, you're not going to be able to see everything, right? You're only going to be able to see so far until what? Beyond the horizon, you can only see out to the horizon, right? Then what? So, but we're saying the world is flat. So what does that mean?
Like with internet, it's like nothing that we can't see.
There's nothing we can't see, right? So when you start looking at jobs these days, are you just competing with the people in this classroom or the people in San Diego, or who are you competing with when you start looking for jobs and other things? Everybody in the world. It could be someone from China, someone from India, someone from Philippines, somebody from Canada, somebody from Mexico. So we talk about this whole world is flat. I mean, nowadays with collaboration and things like Skype, I mean, like phone calls are free. You can do video phone calls, and it's free to anybody in the world. Okay? So as we start looking at social media, I mean, does anybody have friends in like their Snapchats or their Instagrams or their Facebooks that maybe don't live here? Maybe they live across the United States. Maybe they're in another part of the world. You met somebody on vacation, and now you're buddies with them. Again, that whole world is flat concept. So social media then is based on these virtual flat user communities. So as we start looking at these user communities, we're like, we have like this whole original community A, but then perhaps user 1 here knows user 5 and 6. What's likely going to happen to user 5 and 6 on their Facebook or something? They might get a message saying what? Hey, do you know user 2 or user 3 or user 4 or perhaps user 7 or user 8? Why would that happen?
Suggestions from people you know.
Suggestions from because you're linked up with user 5 here and user 6, or 5 and 6 are hooked up with 1, then it might say, hey, because 5 knows 1, perhaps 5 might know 2 or 3 or 4 here, or possibly 7 or 8. Okay, so when you start getting all these, do you know this person or suggested people, this is all through this concept of connection data. We're going to find that we have content data, that's the stuff you read, and then we have connection data. And that connection data is almost kind of a little bit like metadata, but it's like it forms the connections and the algorithms, so that's how you can get the suggestions of, oh, you know this person, you might also know these people as well. So again, to this whole concept of connection data. Okay, cool. All right. So that was one user, or that was one group. We said users. The next one is a social media sponsor. This is number 2, social media sponsor. So a sponsor is typically going to be someone, and this is kind of in a flavor of a business world, this is going to be somebody who's selling products, who wants to entice people to buy their products. So they might have their social media presence. So if you're a company, what social media might you have?
Facebook.
Facebook, okay.
Twitter, LinkedIn.
Facebook,
Snapchat.
Twitter,
Instagram.
LinkedIn, okay.
Yelp.
LinkedIn, Yelp, good, Leah. So that's how I got Trikes Ruba. Facebook, LinkedIn, what else? I heard some others. Instagram. Okay. So when these companies embark on this, they're essentially a social media sponsor. So what do you think? Do they just hang their shingle out there, or what does it mean if they put that social icon on their website? Then what does that mean for the company? Can they just, is that it? They're just done, or what do they have to do? You have to market themselves, and tell me some of the things about the marketing, Leah.
They show what they're doing, they're currently doing.
They show what they're doing, and what else? Do they have, so if somebody goes in and asks them a question, do they have to respond, or can they just leave it, or what do you guys think?
No, they have to have somebody there to respond.
Okay, they have to have somebody there to respond, right? Because if not, then it could actually backfire. Instead of it being a good thing, like, this company really doesn't care. It's like, gosh, what happens if I buy their product? Are they going to care if I buy the product? So you can see that this is kind of like a big commitment. And then now you have like these new jobs of just like social media technicians, social media workers, that a company will now have these social media workers. And these are just like whole brand new jobs that we never even had like 4, 5, 6 years ago. Okay, so you kind of just see how the whole internet is evolving. So, if you're going to commit yourself to social media, then you actually are going to have to actively work that. So the other third user then is social media application providers. So these folks store and retrieve social media data on behalf of users and sponsors. Again, this context of this chapter isn't us together as just regular social media users. This is in the context of social media for a business. So therefore, it's going to incorporate users and sponsors. So this is going to be like the Facebooks and the Instagrams and everybody else. So how much does social media cost a user?
Nothing.
Nothing, right? It doesn't cost you anything. What about a sponsor? Do they have to pay? So if you're Nordstrom's, what might you have to pay for? So the advertising, and they'll say, hey, here's people that like you, but to get to those people and advertise to them, you're going to pay us money, okay? So the social media people, they actually have to make money as well, okay? So they have to pay for all the hardware and the software that we'll see on the next page. So again, users typically do not pay a fee. However, comma, sponsors may or may not pay a fee. So typically, if they want to harvest the information and the people that have liked their page, then companies like Facebook are going to charge to advertise to the communities on their liked pages, okay? Because at the end of the day, Facebook has to make money, right? So, why don't you guys give us your popsicle pair? So, who's missing a popsicle pair today? All right, so Sam. So, let's see. Sam, I'll have you get with. Oh, wait. No, Austin's got his. All right, so who's missing popsicle pairs today? So, Corey and JR, and then Sam and Yang. Okay? So, why don't you talk about these for a couple of minutes, and then the social media singular, discipline, true or false, and explain. We kind of had that circle, and then there's 3 types of organizational roles. Explain each. Okay, so that's what you're going to try to find out here. Yeah, right? So we said social media is not a singular discipline. We said it's based on like the brain people that think about how to, like the psychology, sociology, marketing, and then on an IT side, we had the MIS, Management of Information Systems, and typically this is always going to be done in a cloud. So from a Management of Information Systems, it's going to be the infrastructure plus the middleware. So that'll be the platform as a service pieces of it. And then computer science, that's going to be the end user software as a service piece of it. And then Corey and JR told us about the 3 different types. We had user communities. These are the actual people that are reaching out and using it. Then we had people like the sponsors. This is going to be the merchants who want to know more about you. They want to sell their products to you via social media. They can either design their own social media product, or they can do something like Facebook or Instagram, or what's the one, the shopping, the other one, the one with all the lists. What am I thinking of? So, it's like you have like a list where you can build the list where people, gosh, what's that social media site? What is it?
Angie's List?
No, not Angie's List. It's just like it's like the if you're going shopping, you have like the boards. What's that? Pinterest. Thank you, Pinterest. So like Pinterest, right? So I'm not going crazy, right? I know early Monday for me too. So you have Pinterest. Okay, so that's another one. So you could create all these yourself, or if you're a sponsor, you could say, I'm going to leverage what's already out there. I want to get the information, but for me to get to the good, juicy information, I'm going to have to go pay for it. Okay, and then we have the application providers, and they essentially have the platform, but they want to get paid for you to get that information. That's how they make money. All right, so moving on, let's talk about the 5 components of social media information systems. So I kind of already discussed this a bit, where we said the application providers host the presence in elastic servers in the cloud. So this is kind of like the infrastructure, and as a review, we say infrastructure as a service. What are we referring to? Infrastructure as a service. Remember that tiered cake kind of thing? So infrastructure as a service. What's in that bottom level?
The hardware.
The hardware. So things like what, Danielle?
That's a great.
How much storage space they need.
Thank you.
Okay, so storage. What else? What about the brain? The CPU, okay, like the RAM, the CPU, and all that stuff, and even the operating system, okay? And then, you could say that, as far as the application providers also develop and operate custom proprietary social media software. So essentially, this is going to be what the end user hits, and anytime you're, so this would be a clue for Chapter 7 homework. If you go onto a website, and if you're accessing the software, like at a website, is that software as a service or platform as a service? What do you guys think? So if you go to like Facebook, are you looking at, if you're going to go, so if you go look at like Facebook, are you accessing software as a service or platform as a service, you think? Software as a service. Anytime you guys are hitting like an end user application, that's going to be software as a service. If you're actually into the hardcore database, not the database to the forms, so when you look at the forms and the end user software, that's software as a service, okay? But that software as a service reaches down into what? The platform as a service. And what do we have at the platform as a service? Anybody remember? No? So what? So if you're getting information, what do we typically store information in?
Oh.
Database, right? So, okay, so as a review, guys, right, we have like, you have the end user software, right? This is the stuff that people are actually going to hit, okay? And then what? Does that get information? So that is going to reach down a layer to pull up all the information. All that information is in the middle, and that's going to be like things like your middleware or your databases, okay? Can the software and the databases just run in thin air, or what do they need to run on top of? They need servers to run on top of, okay? So they need to have the compute, so they need to have like the storage, the hard drives, and the CPUs and the operating system. So that's the most basic things, and on top of that, you can put the database, and then on top of that, you can put the end user software. When you go to Facebook, you don't look at the gobbledygook of the inside of the database. You look at the pretty like forms and applications. So does everybody get that? Okay, cool. So make sure you know that. And then there's two types of data that we're going to talk about. There's content data and connection data. The content data is the information that people will put in and share both to the sponsors and from the sponsors to the people. That is going to be content data, okay? And then we have connection data, and this is the data about relationships. So when we have that connection data, then we can create these user communities, including trying to entice people to grow their communities by saying, hey, Diego and MJ are popsicle pairs, and maybe Diego and Joseph are in the same class. Then it could be that, hey, MJ, do you know Joseph because of those relationships? So you guys see how that works? Okay. So that connection data is important in being able to create and expand the relationships, okay? And then we have sponsors. They're going to have to develop procedures for how to create content, how to manage. So this is a big one that we're going to learn about. The big thing is managing user responses. Sometimes you get good user responses. Sometimes you get your product blows user responses. So what do you do with that? Do you just delete it, or what do you do? You could, or you can even be nasty back to those people. But we'll see what happens with that. That happened to Nestle with their Kit Kats, and we'll talk about that in a couple slides. Okay? And then removing obsolete or objectionable content. If somebody swears on your site, is that okay to pull out? Or maybe somebody says something that's like nasty or yeah, okay. So, and we already kind of talked about this already, but we have this whole social media creating like new job titles, new responsibilities. So it's kind of like one of those jobs that's evolving. nowhere did people need social media technicians to manage their content and responses, but now they do. So if anybody loves social media and lives for that, I mean, you could have a job doing that at a company and it pays decent money. So social media is not without cost. We said for users, it's free, but what about sponsors? Do they have to pay for anything? They may or may not, but more than likely, if they want to get good user information for the people that like their pages, then they're going to have to pay for that information. Also, if they have a person responding to their social media, they're going to have to pay that person, their salary just to do that as well. So these are some of the costs that a social media sponsor has. So again, it's going to be for someone to develop and implement their social media network procedures. Because we said this is a information system, hardware, software, data, people, and procedures. So we talked about creating procedures is going to cost money. We talked about people to respond to your social media, that's going to cost. And then if you want to advertise and get information, then you're going to have to pay the application providers. You have to pay the Instagrams, the Facebook, and the Pinterest people. What about if you're an application provider? Do you have any costs associated with that? Because you have to do what? We talked about the 3 layers. You have to have some probably server farm if you're big, where you have all these servers. So you're going to have to pay for the equipment, you have to pay for the electricity, the space, plus the air conditioning to do that. Okay? You're also going to have to pay for like the database, the middleware software. You're also going to have to pay the developers to develop the back-end software for like the end user applications. So this is going to be kind of like the infrastructure and the platform as a service pieces of this. And this is going to be the software as a service piece. And because you're a sponsor and you're essentially paying for software as a service, that also includes what? So if you buy software as a service, that gets platform and infrastructure, right? So once you buy that, you buy the whole bundle. Okay? Cool, good. It's starting to get there. Excellent. But at the end of the day, though, if you're an application provider, ultimately your goal is to do what? You have to make money, right? So you have to create a product that's so good that you have enough sponsors to exceed your costs so you make a profit, right? Okay? If you're a social media sponsor, you have to make sure your juice is worth the squeeze as well. So you have to make sure the cost that you're paying the application provider is offset by what? The increase of revenue based on people buying your product due to social media. Okay? So you have to make sure it's worth your time and effort to pay the application provider for the increased revenue for your products. Okay? So it's all about money, right? Always. All right, so let's talk then. So it's kind of interesting now, too, what this whole thing has done. It's essentially flipped everything on top of its head. And if we kind of think about from a traditional customer resource management perspective, if you were buying a car, let's say like 10 or 15 years ago, how did that look?
Had to walk on the lot.
You had to go walk on the lot. What else? So you didn't have the internet, well, maybe like 20 years ago, and I'm dating you guys before you're born. If you wanted to buy a car, then you basically had these like, the nice brochures that are in the car dealers, and they still have those today. But now you have what? So if you're buying you have the internet, so you can just go, and if you want to, you can and you can basically get all the information that you want. So it used to be in the olden days, from a CRM perspective, the company controlled the relationship They controlled what information they gave you. Nowadays, what's happened? Well, each person crafts their own relationship. So you can buy a product from Amazon per se, but that doesn't mean you have to do a review. But maybe some people are compelled to do a review. Typically, people are compelled to do a review, a bad experience or a good experience. That's what I find out. That holds true for me too. Usually a couple times a year, I'll go look at Rate My Professor. It's like every once in a while, you have like one bad review in there. But for the most part, they're usually pretty good. No. I would never do that. No.
This guy's awesome.
Yeah, no. So, but usually if somebody has, but it's kind of like middle of the road, you don't get the responses. So it's weird that this whole social media is like, you know, people that have bad experiences or good experiences seem to be like the people or the ones that get in reviews, okay? But again, you get to craft that relationship. A person can buy a product from Amazon and, you know, they don't have to write a review, but they might feel compelled to write a review. So you guys get to craft that relationship with the person. So that's completely different. So if you're a company, you've essentially lost lost control of everything, okay? So it's kind of interesting. So that all comes through like things like blogs, discussion boards, frequently asked questions, and user reviews. Also, a lot of times, product users are willing to help each other out. So, you know, it might be that if somebody is douchey on Amazon, so, you know, sometimes you get like the product reviews and you might see what? You get a 1-star review. It's like, this came to me and was broken. And if you're Amazon, you get a 1-star review. It's like, that's not our fault. The GPS like dropped it on your front doorstep. We can't really control. It's kind of out of our hands. So sometimes you'll say, hey, you know, it's like, what was the product like? Did you like the product? It's like, obviously the FedEx or the UPS person kind of screwed up. But, you know, do you like the product or not like the product? And people will just like harp on other things. But a lot of times what will happen is you'll see the user community kind of fix that, saying, hey, you know, that's good. And sorry about they got busted, but how do you like the product or something like that? Okay. And then also if it's not correct or good, sometimes the product users will kind of like write the community. Okay. So let's talk about crowdsourcing. What is crowdsourcing? Anybody know what crowdsourcing is? Has anybody heard of the coolest cooler before? No. This is kind of cool, right? So let's go play a clip on the coolest cooler. Okay, edit. All right. So coolest cooler, take one.
The cooler is a complete redesign of what a cooler can be. First, you've got this 18-volt rechargeable lens. What's a party without music? The coolers come with a removable Bluetooth speaker that connects to any smartphone with wirelessly stream music from up to 30 feet away. And since you've got that 18-volt battery for the blender, why not get the most out of it? Maybe your camera battery. Recharge your gear wherever you are with this waterproof USB card. That's the sound of a cooler coming down off the shelf. It's the sound of imminent fun. So why haven't cooler designs changed in almost 50 years? Boring coolers are boring, break easily, and are a pain to get to and from your destination. I wanted a cooler that was really well built, yet had so much fun built into it that I would look for excuses to get outside that door. So I created the cooler. The cooler is a complete redesign of what a cooler can be. First, you've got this 18-volt rechargeable.
So what do you think? So here's crowdsourcing. So we'll let it go a little bit longer here, and we'll.
You're already carrying around a cooler full of ice and tasty beverages. Why not blend them up and become a summertime hero anytime, anywhere? And what's a party without music? The coolest comes with a removable Bluetooth speaker that connects to any smartphone to wirelessly stream music from up to 30 feet away. It's amazing where speaker technology has come in the last few years. You can skip songs and adjust the volume right from your phone, and this little box can really put out.
So you guys kind of get the gist. So this is like a whole thing called crowdsourcing, where This guy goes out and says, hey, I want to build a cooler. I have some ideas, but give me other ideas. So kind of an interesting concept here where you don't even need like the engineers in your company to help design this. You have people help design this. So what do you think? If you as a user got to help design, maybe you design the next like basketball shoe or tennis shoe or the coolest cooler here, what do you think your likelihood is of buying a product? Is it more, less, or the same?
More likely.
More likely. Why, Danielle?
Because they're taking your input.
Yeah, they kind of have your skin in the game. So, oh my gosh, these guys can get input from users, reduce their engineering staff, and make more money? Crazy, right? I mean, I think this guy made like $4 or $5 million because this is like on Kickstarter. So this is just people with ideas like, yeah, I want to be one of the first people to have the coolest cooler. So it's kind of like this whole concept is just like crazy. And again, it's like that whole, you as a user get to control the relationship you want to have with the company. So one of the things we have is like Web 2.0. On the enterprise piece of things, we have Enterprise 2.0, where you now have users able to share knowledge and problem-solving techniques. And this has 6 different characteristics called slates, and you have to know these. Okay, so know these, and this is the acronym SLATES. Okay, so there's 6 things here. There's like search. So now you can basically like search through the content. You can have links to other items on the web. You have authoring. So this is people that are creating blogs and wikis. And you have tags. So these tags create these things called folksonomies. So if has anybody ever seen like those meta tags? If you're putting in a blog, you like put like keywords in there that helps search. So these are these tags. And then we have things like extensions for usage patterns. So what about something like Pandora? What does Pandora do?
Recommends.
Okay, it recommends, but then based on if you ever have a song playing, if you thumb it up, then what happens? Songs similar to that, and it's going to be what? It's going to look at maybe like the singer person or the band, or it might look at that genre or other things. And then you have signals where you can have subscriptions and alerts. For example, you guys get many signals from me and Blackboard as reminders probably, say, hey, this isn't it, or something like that, or something's coming due. So we have these 2 different concepts. We have pulling versus pushing. So in Blackboard, you guys don't have to keep checking all the time. You'll just get something from me, and that's considered a push. Okay, so instead of you saying every 5 minutes, hey, did Prof. Rick go post something on Blackboard? You don't have to worry about that. You just get so that would be the concept of pulling, or you'll see sometimes pulling or polling, where you have to keep constantly checking. Okay, so maybe you're expecting an email from somebody, and that person's like, I sent it. What will you do then on your end if you want to get it really quick? Well, send it again, or what happens? Does the email get there instantaneously? A lot of times it gets there pretty quick, but you might have to do that. Check email, check email, check email, check email. Okay? So when you're doing that, you're kind of doing polling, or you're doing more of a pulling versus a pushing where it just shows up. Okay, does that make sense? So we have the signals. So again, let's run through these again. We have search. So this is the ability to go search through data. You have links. You have authoring. This is actually people writing content. You have tags that will help your search. So these tags kind of work together. These tags work in conjunction with search. Then you have extensions. So you have like people looking at usage patterns. Okay, so things like Pandora start learning you, and this is through a concept called heuristics. Okay, and then you have signals. So this is like if somebody launches something, Or if you're in Facebook and if you like something, then what happens if they post something? You automatically get it pushed down to you. So you don't have to keep checking the site, it just gets pushed out to you. Okay? Does it kind of make sense, sort of, kind of?
Yeah.
At least for now. Okay, red star, but I would know these 6. So this is good to know. All right, so let's just do this as a class together. Let's do this as a class together. Does anybody, who wants to take on the 5 social media information systems components? Anybody? So it's like 4 or 5 slides back. What do you guys think? What are the different components? Okay. It was like, oh, well, we have it all down. All right, who's being shy? Corey.
One of them is Elasticsearch in the cloud.
Okay, so good. So let's go look at this. So we talked about elastic servers in the cloud. So we said that you can kind of dial in your user response on this. You can increase or decrease. So that's what happens. So, you know, as Facebook needs more and more, they just keep adding more on there. It's no big deal to you guys as users. It just happens. It's like elastic. And it might be that they shrink or grow their servers over time for the application providers. And then what else, Corey?
Content data.
Okay, well, and then we have the application providers developing the custom code. So that's going to be the end user software. So as you go to Facebook, there's always kind of like things morphing and changing, like Messenger and other things. So this is that whole concept of software as a service, the end user software you guys have, running on top and pulling information from the middleware, from the database, okay, usually through forms, because we don't give our users raw databases to look at. We'll give them nice, pretty software, okay? And then that runs on top of machines, because these machines can't just run out of thin air, okay? And then now, Corey, now what do we have? The content data. So this is the data that you enter and that social media sponsors also possibly reply back to. And then we had connection data. And what do we do with connection data? Kelly, connection data, what do we do with that?
We use it for relationships.
Okay, so we had our picture here where we said, hey, if you like one person and they're in your community, then it might be, if you know a different person, then those 2 other people that aren't friends with you might get linked up. They might get the people you may know, and it's using this connection data to create the people you may know list. Okay, so it kind of works pretty well, doesn't it? Like, I mean, people even back, every once in a while you get something for people back in high school, like some 30 years ago. I'm like, oh yeah, that person, I know that person. So yeah, all right. All right, and then social media is free of charge to all organizational roles. True or false?
False.
False. So who has to pay?
The sponsors.
The sponsors have to pay. Okay, so they have to pay what? What are some of their costs?
They have to pay for the advertising, pay for people
The
who like
labor
their
costs?
page.
Yeah, so they'll have to pay the application, social media application provider. If they want information, then who else do they have to pay? The person that works on it. Okay, and then they might have to pay someone to develop procedures as well of how that person's going to respond. Okay, the user, do they have money? Do they have to pay out anything? The user, so the end user, they kind of free of charge. What about the application provider? Yeah, they have to like go develop. They have to have like, you know, they have to develop the whole infrastructure, you know, buy or develop or have the servers for the infrastructure as a service, the platform as a service, and develop the end user software as a service software. Okay? And we talked about the impact of social media on customer resource management. So what do you think the impact of that is, Sebria? So we talked about like the impact. I'm sorry?
Of customer service management?
Yeah, exactly. So if you go back a couple slides, what do we say here? So what do we say in like the red?
How do we control relationships, each customer cross relationships?
Okay, so what does that mean?
that means that
No? Anybody want to help out Sabria? Tim, what do you think?
It has to do with the rate my professor kind of thing, right?
The way my professor, or it could be like the review on Amazon, right? So it used to be before we had like all this social media, or you're buying a car, it used to be only what the manufacturer wanted to tell you, right? So of course, if the manufacturer is if they're giving you the information, I'm going to say, well, this product's pretty good, but this isn't all that great. So they're going to say, yeah, our product's the best in the world, right? But now this whole concept of social media, you can believe them, but I'm going to believe users. And do you trust it if there's more users or less users? What do you guys think? More user reviews, because that makes it start making it statistically significant, right? So we said as long as you have like 30 or more, we call that statistically significant. Okay. So from a CRM perspective now, as a manufacturer, you kind of lost control of things. So you can put out what you want to in TV ads, but a lot of times people will look at user ads that other users have rated on that product. Okay, and then we talked about crowdsourcing. So crowdsourcing, what's that, Jesus? What is crowdsourcing?
Yeah, like your input to create an idea.
Okay, so it's like input to create an idea, and you might even say, hey, user community, tell us your ideas. So, the coolest cooler, somebody probably wrote that guy and said, maybe thought of the idea, and he said, you know what, I'm going to have this blender. Maybe somebody else said, it'd be awesome if you had like a radio in there. So you could plug your iPhone in there. You're able to charge your iPhone. So then what's the impact of that, Jesus, on like crowdsourcing? So if you got to help design something, are you more likely to buy it or less likely to buy it? More likely to buy it, right? Then what about that company? Maybe they had less engineers to help design this because people designed it. So you have like the user community designing this, and then you also have the whole people are more into it. Okay. The next thing we talked about is Enterprise 2.0 here. So we said this enables users to share knowledge, problem-solving techniques. Okay, we talked about slates. So we said we had search, being able to search content, links, authoring. We had tags, so that'll help us do our searches. Then we had extensions, things like heuristics, how we like select music in Pandora. Then we talked about signals, and this is like either, this is like pushing content out to people based on subscription. So if you like something on Facebook, anytime they post something new, you'll get that notification saying, hey, this person just posted new content. Okay? Coolio. All right, so let's talk about social media now. Actually, let's do a quick stand-up break. Get you guys moving a little bit. Okay, nice stretch, rainy day. All right, you guys are good. All right, so as far as if you start looking at business capital, there's three different types. There's physical capital. This is like factories, machines, things you can touch. There's like human capital. That's like knowledge in our brains. And then we have this whole concept of social capital. So this is basically social relations with expectation of marketplace returns. So if you're Nike and you're going to put Facebook on your website, you have the expectation of what? If you're Nike, if you're some person and you're advertising, if you join, like if you're going to pay Facebook, your expectation is what? You're going to say, I'm going to get more people, I'm going to be able to sell more products. Okay? So as we start looking at these different relationships, the social capital, the value of the social capital is going to depend on the number of relationships, on the strength of relationships, and the resource is controlled. So what do you think? The number of relations, is the value increases or decreases with the number of relationships? If it goes, so as far as number of relationships, is it better to have less or more number of relationships? More, okay? So more number of relationships, okay? And then we have like the strength of the different relationships. So if anybody is in like LinkedIn, okay, so maybe they're trying to get a hold of a person. How many people are doing LinkedIn now? Okay, so you guys need to try to go look at LinkedIn, and that's like huge. If you want to get a job, you got to be dialed in LinkedIn. Make sure you have a good picture too. Don't post your beer bongs and on the beach and everything else. This is like a professional site for like employees and people looking for jobs. Okay, so it might be that you have on LinkedIn, you could say, hey, I want to interview. Maybe you heard that some person's hiring, and maybe Seabury and I are connected, and Seabury is connected through John, and then I want to get to Leah, and it might say, hey, you could do Leah, but you're like 3 worlds away from her, 3 different connections away. So when you start talking about the strength of the relationships, if you have a direct connection with a person, that's going to be stronger versus if you have like 2 or 3, if you have like, if it's like, this person knows that person. Okay, so it's better for you to directly know somebody. And the sources they control. So if Leah is the CEO of the company, she controls a lot of resources. So if I know her, and if she thinks I'm skilled, then the likelihood of me getting the job is probably pretty good. Versus if maybe Leah's like a just graduating college and an entry-level worker. Okay, so does that kind of make sense? Social capital. So the more number of relationships, as far as like your linkages between relationships, if you have direct relationships, that's better. And the resources that person controls all drives social capital. So red star, and you see like a 1, 2, 3 here. Those are all good things to know for tests and quizzes. Okay, all good stuff. All right, so let's talk about social media policy. So we kind of hinted about this earlier, and the social media policy is going to say how you can respond back to social media. So if somebody says, hey, your product is great, then sure, it's like, no big deal. It's like respond back to that person saying, yeah, you're a valued customer and great things. There's a Nestle on their Kit Kats, they were getting palm oil from Indonesia, but they're like going through it and like wrecking trees. So Greenpeace was kind of like after these guys. And they have this whole article here where the people at Nestle kind of were mean and nasty and derogatory to the people. So they created like this Nestle Kit Kat wrapper with killer in there instead of Kit Kats as a way to kind of like, tick off. So this thing kind of like went viral on Nestle. So this was like this whole, so this Nestle person said, to repeat, we welcome your comments, but please don't post using an altered version of any of our logos on our picture. They will be deleted. So what do you think that did? So everybody's like, go dogpile on Nestle. Let's create all these logos and beat the crap out of Nestle. And then what did Nestle do? So that kind of like inflamed that whole user community, and they wrote back. So it went from bad to worse here. Let's see, Nestle wrote this. Thanks for the lesson in manners. Consider yourself embraced, and oh please, it's like we're censoring everything to only allow positive comments. So it's like that even like, so they just had like this whole like storm of all these people like pouncing on Nestle for this thing. But Nestle finally got control of the situation. There's a series for mistakes which we'd like to apologize for. We stopped deleting posts. and I've stopped being rude or whatever. So that was kind of like Nestle apologizing to the world. So you can delete things, but if you do, you could have backlash of the user community. So you really have to be careful when you're responding back to social media. So your social media policy is going to have responses for how to respond to problematic content. So usually this is, so if you have criticism, it's probably good to leave it. It shows that you're honest and not just like, trying to have all the good reviews. So if you respond back, it could be dangerous. We saw in that Nestle example. So, or maybe you're like on Amazon, and if somebody says, hey, we don't like this, we had batteries in something, and the batteries kept on dropping out. Now, if you're a customer, you could say what? Or if you're the manufacturer, it's like, hey, thanks for pointing out that the batteries were coming loose. Several different of our valued customers experienced the same thing. We've improved that and fixed that. Please try us out again. So if you have something positive to respond back with, that makes it a lot better. Okay? So typically, if you're going to respond back, especially if you say, you're right, we fix this, and we value your, we value your input, and we value you being a customer, that's really good. Okay, does that make sense, sort of, kind of? Okay, so usually if you have something positive, so if you're going to respond back, it's always better if you have something positive to respond back with. So again, if you're patronizing or insulting, you can create a huge backlash, so you don't want to do that. Allow the community to constrain the users. If something is unfair, a lot of times the user community will fix that. However, if something is inappropriate, irrelevant, obscene content, yeah, you can delete that because you don't want to have that on your site. But if it's not inappropriate, if it's just criticism, it's good to actually leave it on there. Okay. So as far as social media, where this is taking us, it's even like comes into like the workplace as well. If you're a vendor or if you're an employer, you actually start, we've already talked about the vendors are losing control of the customer relationship. It's what the people craft. But what about employers and their employees? Do people stay at companies for 20 and 30 and 40 years like they used to? No, right? So employees will now craft their own relationships with their employers as well. It could be that people just like move around every couple of years. So these employers, just like vendors have kind of lost control of the consumers, employers have kind of lost control of their employees from now it's kind of like, hey, we're just going to build you the shell, you're going to come into work, and we value you as an employee. It used to be that employers like, yeah, we're lucky we hired you and you have a job and you get a paycheck. But nowadays, especially with jobs that really require skilled people, employers can't afford to lose you. So they want to keep you. They want to entice you. For example, what happens at Google? Anybody saw like the movies and heard about Google? So if you work at Google, what's your environment like there at the workplace? You wear tennis shoes? What about food?
Whatever you want. They have like 4 or 5-star restaurants on.
Yeah, they've got it right there. They don't want you leaving. When I would be doing like contracts with the government at SAC, and I was like the proposal manager, the last thing we're right there by UTC Mall. And you have an hour for lunch, but going from UTC, it's like it takes you an hour just to leave your office and get there and back, let alone eating. Every single time you're like, don't worry about leaving, we'll bring lunch in to you. You want pizza? What do you want today? So you just do that to entice them. I mean, Google does your dry cleaning. They do everything for you. Okay? They have ping pong tables. You can do everything. It's like now if you look at the high-tech companies around here, I mean, they'll always have stock refrigerators with snacks and everything else now. Water, Cokes. I'm sorry? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So if you look at the internship. So again, these employers, they essentially just provide this endoskeleton, this skeleton for people to work into. Especially you also have people doing like telecommuting and other things. So there's this whole concept now of emergence where the employers are losing control of their people as well. So all it takes is, you know, if you're an employee and you leave a company saying, hey, this employer blows, I hated working there, this is what the conditions are like, what happens if that gets out there in social media land? It's like, does anybody want to work for you anymore? Like, no. So social media even, you know, drives the whole employer-employee relationship as well. So very powerful once, so it used to be that consumers and employees didn't have a voice. Now with the whole social media, now they have a voice of reviewing customer products, and people can actually say, hey, I like working here, I don't like working here.
They have a website just for that.
Is that what's that website called?
I don't remember, but
Yeah.
like, you can search up like a website or like a company, and it'll show like all the people that have worked there, and they leave their own reviews of what they're not with.
Yeah, there you go. So,
Glassdoor.
what is it?
Glassdoor, I think.
It was a Glassdoor. I know Glassdoor. So does Glassdoor have that? So I mean, I usually do that to look for jobs and other things for the internships. But Glassdoor does it. So good. So you can go take a look at Glassdoor. All right. So does this kind of make sense? Again, it's that whole loss of control, that two-way communication. Okay. So we said social capital is based on what? Anybody remember the three? Okay, so we said number of relationships, the strength of the relationships, and the resources controlled. What else? Let's see. Social media policy, what does that do for us? Social media policy. So do employers just say, hey, any social media thing that comes in, just going to respond back, or what does it say? So what about like problematic? So problematic ones, your social media policy is going to say, here's how you're going to respond to problematic things if they don't like our product or something like that. Okay. Okay. So one of the largest issues that it covers is bad users. And should a company respond to social media criticism? Yes or no?
No, unless it can do it in a positive manner.
So if you can do it without insulting people, especially if you have like a new version or something that said that we recognize the issue and said, yes, we fixed it, and that's great. And then what's emergence? We just covered it, emergence. We talked about Glassdoor.
The loss of employer control.
Yeah, so basically that whole concept of, as an employer, you have less control over your employees. There's things like Glassdoor where you can provide the, response of how you like the company. So it's much less control for the employer too. All right. So that covers chapter 8, social media. Right. So quiz on Wednesday. Quiz on